Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up for this, our inaugural webinar, where we're covering Platform One and Platform One's current ongoing efforts of the commercialization process. And so I'm Ashton Dragon. I'm from Catalyst Campus, a partner of Platform One. And I would like to introduce our speaker today, Duong Hang. He is the director, He is currently the Deputy Director of Platform One, where he oversees the $90 million program to deliver the only DoD DevSecOps Reference Design-compliant platform with the continuous authority to operate to the Department of Defense. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will hand it off to Tom.
Thanks, Ashton. I want to thank the Catalyst Campus for putting this together. This is a huge milestone for the team working with Platform One as a partner to help deliver capabilities out to the DoD, the federal government, and beyond. So real excited to work with them. I also want to recognize Joey. He's like this guy from Fed 100 that I found, and so he's been really helpful. So I asked him to be part of this briefing. So thanks, Joey, for helping P1 for all the things you've been doing for us. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm sharing my slides, and I just want to start off with the fact that I'm the deputy. The material leader, my boss, is Lieutenant Colonel Brian Viola. He couldn't make it today. He's actually at the Rocky Mountain Cyber Symposium in Colorado Springs, but he definitely wants to echo, or at least pass on, or wanted me to pass on the fact that, you know, he's excited for you guys to join us today, learn about Platform One, learn about the things that we're doing, especially on the commercialization side. And just, if you have any questions, please post in the chat and we'll get to it. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of things today, and these slides are actually, you know, kind of some things that we talk to a lot of different people that don't know necessarily what DevSecOps is sometimes. So we have a wide range of audience members within the DoD that we try to communicate this stuff to. So a lot of this stuff, if you understand it, please have patience. But if you have questions about the things that I'm going to talk about, please feel free to ask those questions. I think this is just a place to level set everyone's understanding of what Platform One does and maybe some things that we don't do that maybe we've had rumors about. So some of the things I'm going to cover today, some basic foundational information about Agile and DevSecOps, and then kind of how does Platform One play in those spaces? And then finally, you know, when we talk about customer options, you know, these are some of the things that we tell a lot of our customers within that are potential customers for Platform One in other federal organizations, and then kind of the next steps that we've recommended them. So you get a sense of kind of where we are, what space that we occupy, and then how do we deliver those capabilities today. So in this section here, you know, a lot of the stuff we communicate, again, we communicate the value proposition to many folks that don't even know how to spell DevSecOps. And so really what does that mean is you know, in the DoD, the process of building software isn't just a one and done proposition. It's a continuous evolution of learning what our customers or warfighters need, building a little bit, testing it out with them, and finding out what works. The problem is that in the past, we've just taken too long in the DoD to build software. Even though majority of our weapon systems and our systems that we use today, they're not weapon systems in the DoD, are software. And so you can see, you know, in the left chart here, these are some of the basic things that most organizations that do software need to do. But if you can see on the right, the right column, how long it takes the DoD to do it: in years, in months, not in days and not in weeks, like most modern software organizations can do. And so what happens is you have the operator on the left there, a lower left, or the software developer, he's building stuff, and it takes months and years to get it to the warfighter, who's the little icon guy on the right. And so if you look on the right side of the whole chart, I mean, really 94% of all software projects in the DoD are considered failures of some sort. And so you can see, like, whether it's we have over budgeted, we don't meet expectations, behind schedule, that's, you know, on the 51% side, or on the 43% side, they're just utter complete failures because they don't work. Those are the kinds of things that that cause people to not have confidence in what DoD builds or what we try to build today in the software. And so, but you know what? DevSecOps is one of the best it's been around for a while, but for DoD it's considered new, right? It's the idea that we're going to build, learn, build, and we're going to win. And so what that means is really bringing the developers, software developers, together with the operators and reducing the friction between what people build and what people use, and so they can actually get feedback quickly. And so they're using the stuff that we built today in Platform One, and as an example, we had some applications that were written and operated on Platform One today that was used as part of the recent Afghan evacuation a year ago, or almost a year ago, but maybe 6 months ago, where we coordinated using the tools 100 Air Force members, and they were flying 25 cargo jets of both the large kind, the C-17s, the KC-10s, and we even used commercial planes, and they coordinated all those flights across Afghanistan and the rest of the world to bring folks out of that country that as the U.S. was getting out of Afghanistan. And so they ended up moving about 124,000 people in a matter of weeks and days and weeks to get them out and to safety. And they were using the software that we developed as within the DoD on top of Platform One, and we made changes, tweaking to the mission as needed. And so you can see this was a huge effort, and you can see the quote there. Mattermost was another enabling capability that we deliver running on Platform One that provides a Slack-like collaboration environment that our pilots could use on even their personal devices to coordinate air traffic. So really, really amazing stuff. And so what happens is, what does that mean? So if we were to compare how Agile happens in the private sector and how Waterfall happens in DoD, you can see like SpaceX as an example. And this is something, again, these are charts that we try to explain to a lot of our DoD customers why they need to start moving towards Agile and DevSecOps. These stats, they tell a story. Things take much longer on the DoD side. We build software not very slowly, and we don't make changes. We make changes very, very slowly, if at all. And whereas SpaceX, they're making changes all the time. They're adapting and adjusting to the things that are going on and making it relevant to what their needs are. And so they are able to be much more effective. And one of the key technologies that are being used, is containers. And a lot of times, we in the DoD, we're not using those containers. We're not using microservices, cloud native capabilities, and so that's where the shortcomings come from. And this is a distillation. I don't think it's perfect, but certainly open to discussions about what does DevSecOps mean. These are some of the areas of what I see is where it's coming from, where it's human-centered design, how we do work, where we do work based on how people actually work and understand the world, and not trying to force a model of deterministic machine-like processes. That this is a much more humanistic way of working, and which means we're using Agile and Lean to really understand, hey, what are the things that are changing about the world? How do we adjust for that? And then we exploit the fact that today we have commodity IT, right? We have IT that's very easy to get. Cloud is very easy and cheap to get to nowadays. You bring that all together. We use DevSecOps as an implementation of all that to get to what we have today. And that's all really about learning fast. So what does that mean for Platform One, right? So how do we actually enable some of that? Because that's one of our core things. So really fundamentally, Platform One is about the people, whether it's our own internal talent or it's enabling the talent that we have within the DoD to do software, or within industry to partner with us. Is we're bringing together agile speed, leading edge technologies, and innovative acquisitions, and that's all being multiplied by the culture of the people. Whether it's having a place for psychological safety, having a place that allows people to value ideas and inclusion, and basically we need the talent to actually make this happen. And that is actually one of the biggest lessons I've learned since I came to Platform One 8 months ago, that all this stuff that we talk about, technology and tools, that's easy stuff. That's the stuff you can buy. But what's hard is to get the talent. And I think many of you guys may appreciate that, especially when you talk about software. And really this equation is, I like this equation because without culture, if that culture is zero in your organization, none of that other stuff at Agile, being, having Agile processes and technology, it doesn't really matter. It zeroes out in the end. So, and so, kind of like if there's like a question about, well, what is Platform One? What do we do in one chart? We take those talent and we push them towards this idea of where our mission is to guide, empower, equip, and accelerate these program offices that have the money to develop these weapon systems using DevSecOps. And we're trying to get DoD as a whole to change the culture, the process, the technology in that order to do so. And so on the right, that little layer cake kind of shows where Platform One's technology comes from. So we basically focus on that middle layer says DevSecOps capabilities. We provide capabilities for people to implement DevSecOps quickly, and we provide the platforms to do so as well. So it's an implementation of that. And so if you look at the bottom there, these are kind of our core value streams that deliver the capability. We secure and connect the users using our cloud native access point, and that provides zero trust security for everything we do, so that we have trust that the stuff that we put out is secure and you can trust in using that. We also have on the second column there is hardening can store components through our Iron Bank. So Iron Bank is a set of services to include hardening of containers to make sure that we are actually, we know where the containers are coming from, so especially when a lot of the software is coming from open source, and we can make sure that we harden it. So that means that we are scanning it, checking it, and then adding additional software code to make sure that it's protected. And then we store it away so we can allow people to access that stuff and know that they can trust the stuff that we're providing today. The third column there, Big Bang is really taking a lot of those components, and then you have to stitch those containers together to make a platform, to make a place for people to develop software on. And so Big Bang is really where we've developed recipes to integrate via infrastructure as code and configurations code to integrate the stuff that's in Iron Bank to develop that software platform, development platform. And of course, to make sure that people kind of understand how those components, those components and infrastructure code and configurations code come together, we actually implement what we call Party Bus, which is essentially taking those things and actually instantiating or creating an environment, a platform as a service for people to develop software off of. And that's actually a service that at impact level 2 and impact level 4 information, and it has a continuous ATO that allows people to operate their software when they build it in that environment in Party Bus. They can also get approval to operate it. So really exciting stuff, and people can see the capabilities for what Platform One can do today. So what does that mean, right? So if you kind of look at it from kind of like this cartoon here, I talked about CNAP as really having access control, right? And so you see this guy, he's checking them out, he's scanning, going through the scanners, and if you look at kind of building Platform One and doing software, it's kind of like building a cake. You have this sort of idea that we on the top there where you have like little wheat fields. We take stuff out in the community, including whether it's commercial software or open source, and we bring it in and we scan it and we put it into like a store, in this case an Iron Bank store, a repository, and so that stuff is proven and hardened. And then we build recipe books, whether it's on the bottom there, we have our own recipe books to build a specific type of cake, and in this case Party Bus is kind of like a chocolate cake, or a software factory can take that recipe book, make changes or add to that, like you see above, and it says level up, and they basically created a slightly different cake. In this case, a different software development platform. Maybe they want to do it on instead of because we provide it at an unclassified level. Then maybe they want a software development platform at the secret or top secret level. That's what you can do, and you can make some changes and tailor that to what your needs are. Some of the numbers that we, these are some stats we keep track of. These are a little bit older, but the fact is that we have a lot of different capabilities and users that are taking advantage of this today. We have collaboration tools, which is really Mattermost. I mentioned that before. We also deployed our instance of Jira and Confluence as Atlassian suites that are very popular with our software developers. We have about 28,000-ish users on daily average, and they impact 6 different services, and we actually internally push updates to our software 34 times a day. And the right there, you see like the number of applications that use CNAP that are accessing our tools. You have, our Iron Bank containers right now, we probably have north of 900 now. This is a little bit older, a few months old, but we have about 900-ish containers today. You can see all these program offices in the middle. These are just some of the bigger ones that we track a little bit, but there's also a lot of smaller ones that use our services, and they deploy. And these middle ones actually, 15 of them actually deploy Big Bang. And then at the bottom there, these are a lot of the smaller users that don't have the expertise or can't afford to run their own software development platform using Big Bang, so they run off a party bus. And you can see that we have 192 teams of people that represent about 2,800 developers, and they're pushing. They have about 55 out of all of them. They put out about 55 applications that are in production today, meaning they have actual end users that are touching the environment and using their capabilities and giving them feedback. And it takes about just shy of about a month to get these applications that are developed and updated through the process to get accredited, and we give them what's called a certificate to field, so that basically it's ready to go to any environment to go in production. And really, if you really want to know more about our cybersecurity, kind of like in a different point of view, this kind of gives you the process again, but a little more detail about how we take stuff from open source, and we do the scanning, hardening, and we publish the risk behind them. And you can see how we take, and we actually ingest the containers from Iron Bank into Big Bang, and we use that to actually develop and improve Big Bang, and then those together integrate to, you see kind of transitioning towards the middle of the slide, where it integrates together, and we implement that as Party Bus. So those are kind of the things that you get out of what we provide today. DevSecOps, there's a lot of different steps, as you can see on this infinity symbol. So these kind of highlight the many of the tools that we provide today. One of the value propositions of Platform One is that we try to be as tool agnostic as possible. The idea is that we want the government, in this case Platform One, we want to make sure that we provide capabilities in each of these areas of DevSecOps, that you're not necessarily locked into one vendor. It's not perfect. We still have some kind of preferred ones, or we have some single points of vendor lock in some areas, and we're working towards looking at providing options. But the idea is that we want to make sure that we have a standards-based approach on our platform, so that we don't have lock-in on vendors. And so the idea is that, instead of just going out and going all in on one company that gives you everything you need, and maybe easy to use and highly tailored, but the problem is if you need to back out of it because of whatever reason, it's very difficult to do so. So that's one of the value propositions of Platform One, is the government controls the baseline and controls what's actually going in and out of the baseline for that. Diving a little deeper on the stack, so this is looking at kind of Big Bang itself. So if our customers, we have to explain to them, okay, so what parts of if they adopt Big Bang, what parts are they responsible for? So if you look at the bottom here, if they adopt Big Bang, you see the bottom there, it says vendor clusters and infrastructure. If our customers wanted to adopt Big Bang, they would need to provide their own infrastructure, like a cloud infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or using AWS or Azure Cloud. And they also need to come up with their own vendor cluster, which is like, RKE2, OCP, or Convoy. And then they can then, on top of that, then graph Big Bang on top of that. Now, Big Bang is comprised of 3 different kind of layers of stuff, right? So the main part of Big Bang is Big Bang Core, which is the gray box here. And what that represents is this gray area down here. So these are the different tools, capabilities that represent Big Bang Core. Every Big Bang instance has this core function. Now, for platforms where you're deploying as for development platforms and staging, development platforms, then your instance of that development platform, Big Bang, would include Big Bang add-ons. So a lot of these tools are used for your software developers. And then if you deploy another instance of Big Bang to operate, to have your users tap into the application develop, then they may not necessarily have the add-ons because they wouldn't use the tools that developers would use. Now, on top of that, the orange boxes, these are all the stuff that, you know, you have different stuff. You have third-party supported things like Fortify, Confluence, and Jira. I mentioned those before. And then there's also community supported. So we also have an ecosystem of partners that provide additional capabilities that enhance Big Bang. And so that's the lighter orange there. And so some customer technical options. So what does this mean is, so when we talk to our customers, we say, hey, to help them understand what their options are. So P1, Platform One, a lot of times people think Platform One, depending on your use case or what you use Platform One capabilities for, you may think that's what Platform One does, and that's all we do. So for example, some people might say, hey, I use Mattermost quite a bit. I love it. You know, Platform One does Mattermost. Okay, that's true, but it's true for a certain segment. Some people might say, hey, we use Party Bus because, and that's what Platform One does. That's true, but that's not the only use case. So there's a lot of different use cases out there, and so I want to make sure that people understand, especially our customers, understand what those use cases are and what the customer, what they have to do for that. So if you look at a software development kind of environment, you have this sort of spectrum of things. You got to secure your access, you got to harden components, you got to build the templates, you got to build those pipelines, and then you got to build and run those applications, right? So these are the things that you do as most software development organizations need to do. So obviously we tell them, hey, you know what, organizations can do it themselves. That means they got to do all these things. And again, the limiting factors are talent, because you need the talent to do a lot of these things, to actually find, to do the steps that's necessary and do it correctly. And that's hard. But right now it's a huge limiting factor for most people most organizations to get to doing DevSecOps using modern day tools. Now, we have folks that want to use CNAP, and that's all they need because they want to secure access, but they want to do everything else themselves. So they would have to then focus on components and do everything from that point on, right? Now, they can also use Iron Bank. So they say, hey, I don't want to have to go scour the internet and get different components on my own and make sure it's safe to use and all that stuff. So they can go and rely on Iron Banking, which is a free service that we provide today. And then at that point, they just need to focus on how to stitch those components together using templates, like those infrastructure code and configurations code, building those templates and then doing the rest of the stuff here. They can also say, you know what, I don't want to build those templates. I want to just start with something that's already done, that has a good starting point, and now I want to tailor it from there. Then they can adopt Big Bang. And that's really where we think most organizations, especially the DoD, will get the most value, because most of the stuff, from Big Bang and moving to left, those things, most organizations would use the same components for the most part. And so we recommend that that's where they want to focus their time on. And then they can focus on building those software development platforms in new environments. Again, if they want to go on Azure, they want to go on, top secret, they want to go on something else on-prem, they can do that. Now, finally, if they wanted to say, hey, look, I want to try out Platform One products, I only have software developers, it's really hard to find platform engineers to take Big Bang and get that instantiated for me. They can certainly use Party Bus and go from there. And now it's only for impact level 2 and 4, but that allows them to focus on the application development. So that's why it's a lot of people kind of use Party Bus as a starting point, and kind of to mature the organization to say, hey, I'm using modern tools and be able to develop in a modern way using DevSecOps. The only caveat is that it's only for impact level 2 to 4. It's not meant for 24/7 operations. It's really meant to demonstrate capabilities for them and make sure they whet their appetites and learn from that. And then hopefully organizations one day can then get to the point where they can stand up and run their own Big Bang instance. And so the value proposition is on the left, right? If you do more stuff above, from the do-it-yourself, if you kind of go towards that, yes, you get much more control as a customer. You own most of the costs, which is kind of sucks, especially when you're basically doing the same thing that everyone's doing. And you also, because of that, you have lower focus on what's important to most organizations, which is really building the applications, right? Building the stuff that enables the organization to run. If you start adopting more Platform One services, then you're basically saying, hey, that's the stuff that it's not as important to me. I want someone else to do it and do it right. That's where Platform One comes in. You get less control because, we're going to tell you this is where you get your components from, which is Iron Bank. We're going to tell you need to run Big Bang Core if you want to stitch it together. But those are the things that we think that, that allows organizations to kind of give up control on the things that are not important to them so they can focus on the things that are important to them, which is building the applications that their end users need. And so, and the caveat is that if there's any changes, if they say, hey, I want any changes to like the pipeline stuff, different templates or hardening components, I want to change components, that's going to require their government organization to provide an authority to operate and certificate to field. So those are the things that, it's a caveat that if you want to start doing your own thing, you're still going to be required to have your authorizing official to approve the capabilities they're deploying. And so really the best approach for most people is, hey, start with a few options, learn from it, develop those apps, get feedback from your users and learn, right? It's the Agile mentality. And then as your needs grow, as the customers kind of say, hey, I understand how this works, I want to have more options, then they can graduate and move to the left and get more and basically control their own destiny more. But really, a lot of the limiting factors for most organizations is not just funding, it's not just money, because some of this stuff is expensive. It's really the talent. It's the people that actually can build your platform and pipelines for you. That's where it's tough for them. And so really, this is the stuff that, well, once people use Platform One, what can they provide back? And so open source, we're big on open source. We love open source. And one of the things that we typically try to do too with open source is that we want to actually have kind of like a DoD version of that, meaning that we want to have an ecosystem of developers that are building new capabilities, are actually improving upon the things that we built today in Platform One, and then sharing that by contributing back to the ecosystem through us. So like, for instance, if they find a way to improve one of the containers in Iron Bank, that they would contribute those changes back to Iron Bank and make changes, or they think that there's a better way to do Big Bang, they can submit a change request or merge request, where we would then take that, evaluate it, and if it looks good, we will merge it as part of a future version of Big Bang, and then share it out to everyone so that they can take advantage of the improvements that people have contributed. So these are the things that we want to kind of we want to make sure that we focus on as well. It's not just about using what Platform One provides, but also contributing back to the ecosystem so that we make the whole ecosystem valuable for everyone. And so this is kind of a quick kind of snapshot of like those capabilities I had in the giant slide with the infinity symbol, and kind of showing you kind of the things that in the green check marks that you would do if you adopted some of those P1 capabilities. And of course, anything that's blank, that's what government customers of P1 would actually need to use. And then how do you get to some of these capabilities, right? So again, the left side is kind of the different areas, and a lot of this stuff is limited by three things, we think. Cloud access, software licenses, lots of software, they have licenses to go with it. And then the talent, the people, the ones that have the expertise to do the work. And so these are our current basic order agreements. Or basically, they are a contract construct where we pre-negotiate a lot of the terms and conditions ahead of time before we actually enter into a contract. So they're sort of pre-negotiated, and then you have a order that the government places using those terms and conditions, and they can quickly order off of that. And so we have these areas here. There's 9 vendors in cloud. There's 27 for licenses. There's 43 vendors in the DevSecOps talent pool. And then we have, and then of course we have a specialized P1 BOA resellers, which are 6 vendors that are part of the commercialization pilot. So I'll talk about what that means today. And these kind of list all the companies are in each of these categories of vendors that our government customers can order off of. So lots of, and you can see, like, we have small businesses and large businesses, different ones that have different specialties. So we have a wide variety of vendors and partnerships that can help our government customers implement Platform One capabilities. Now, but what does it mean with commercialization? So one of the things that we've been trying to do is to scale Platform One and be able to scale the adoption of our capabilities. And as I mentioned before, one of the biggest limiting factors for most organizations is the fact that talent is hard to come by, and they don't have the funding to pay full-time equivalents to come in and do all the work and maintain it. They come to us a lot of times and ask us to help them build out a big bang platform for them. That takes, and we unfortunately in the government, and even in Platform One, we have a challenge of scaling as well, because we're government. It's hard to acquire people, to get people, to find talent, and so what we've decided is that, hey, we want to actually kind of blend the best of both worlds by certifying the 43 DevSecOps basic order agreement holders. There was like 43 vendors I showed earlier, and we wanted to certify 6 of them to actually help organizations not only deploy Platform One, but also contribute back to the ecosystem through the very fact that they're actually working with these vendors. So what that really means is, and you see the vendors down below in those 6 vendors, what that means is that these vendors represent the ones that we felt that we went through a competition. The 43 vendors, some of them said, hey, I want to try joining this reseller model. They competed with us. These vendors, we chose them for very specific reasons, whether it's because we've worked with them before, they provided good value, or they have a novel capability that we want to make sure that we had people can access. And so we have placed trust in them to help our customers scale and deploy Platform One capability so they can go on their journey. And so what this model here represents is kind of how this ecosystem of resellers works, commercialization works. So on the left there, you have software factories from the government, but it could be a commercial software factory, like a large company, right? They want to deploy Platform One. They don't have the skill sets to do that, but they don't maybe necessarily want to use Party Bus, so they want to have their own software platform, their own platforms, and maybe have their own ways to develop applications. So what they would do is they would go to these resellers. They can provide. They say, hey, I need X, Y, Z. They levy those requirements. You see on the lower left, and then provide funding for that, right? So it can. And some of those things could be just straight consultation. Maybe they say, hey, or can you help me set up or advise my engineers? I have engineers on staff already, so I need someone to help. They could say, hey, I don't have any engineers to help me set up my own platform. Can you help me? And so they can provide those requirements and funding, and these sort of resellers can do so. Maybe they say, hey, I don't just need someone to help me set it up. I need someone to help me run it. Again, these resellers can do that. And so they provide that funding. And so what happens is these sort of resellers, help provide the capabilities, and they have a special access to Platform One to say, hey, I need some help. They work with Calus Campus. Calus Campus is actually a partner in all this to help provide extra value, provide advice, and also provide additional talent based on the funding they get from the resellers. So the resellers then provide some funding back to the third party. And then the Calus Campus will then be able to find talent to get after some of those improvements in the technology. So in other words, what the value proposition is here is that instead of depending on our customers to help provide feedback and improvements into the ecosystem, this model allows them to actually fund some of those improvements through the fact that they're working with a reseller in this commercialization model. And then we would then help manage on top there. We would oversee and manage the third party in terms of what kinds of talent are brought in and kind of the backlog of improvements for the core sets of technology in Iron Bank and Big Bang to improve that for all the users of the ecosystem. So this is really a way to help scale what we can do today to both deploy Platform One capabilities as well as improve the core technologies. And so for our customers, we tell them, hey, what's the next steps? We kind of have these sites here, we have our touch points on the different capabilities. If they want to do it themselves, but they want some information on Platform One, they can do that on the left. And if they want to go and basically go to Big Bang or Party Bus, that's all the stuff on the right there. So those are some options that they can have to kind of move forward. So I think I'm done here. I just wanted to see if there's any questions.
For those of you who we haven't dropped any questions in the chat, but if you feel free to drop some questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand in the through the reactions button, and we can go ahead and give you a time to talk.
I see Richard had his hand up.
Yeah, so thanks for taking my question, and thanks for the presentation. This was definitely very, very insightful and very helpful. So I think for our organization, we've actually developed apps for the government previously. They're kind of in a phase from continued development, headed towards transition, and we've been chartered to get an ATO from Platform One. So it sounds like we're somewhere between like using images from Iron Bank and going from there. But I guess my question is specifically, what is ATO'd and what is CTF? So is like if we go the big bang route and we deploy our infrastructure in AWS Cloud, does that need to be ATO, or is it just the infrastructure and the platform from Party Bus that's ATO'd?
That's a great question, and it's a very common question or misperception, I guess. If you look at an authority to operate, it's really a holistic approval on all the components of security that's required to run. That you can say, hey, this application and the users, what they do is, it's safe, right? Secure, it's safe. And I say comprehensive and holistic is because, security isn't just a portion of, hey, I use a certain component of software or I'm deploying it in a certain environment. It's a combination of the software, the environment, and the context in which it's running, and the people using it. So it's a whole thing, right, to get an authority to operate. So when we talk about having an ATO, and I think you were kind of leaning towards like reciprocity. I think that's one of the terms to throw out there. Like an ATO reciprocity really, it means that you have reciprocity on some of the aspects of an ATO that's required for an ATO, but it doesn't mean that you have an authority to operate because you have reciprocity or a recognition that whatever you're using, whatever the customer is using, that's similar or the same as what Platform One uses, then grants you an authority to operate for everything that's being used, right? So that's where I think the misconception lies. And so when I had the slide earlier, let me jump back there. Sorry, let me. So when you have when you have this and you're saying, hey, we're using different things, same things, the same components, but you're building in a different template, or you're instantiating the software in a different cloud infrastructure because you're doing big bang. Because you're changing any of those components, the ATO that we provide within Party Bus, because we've instantiated the whole thing, we control access, we have a very specific way of delivering that software and capability. That ATO for Party Bus does not translate automatically to what people when they do it themselves. So you have components that are approved, but not necessarily, or similar to what Platform One does, but it doesn't mean that you have an ATO. Now, to the point about the question about CTF, so certificate to field, again, that's kind of based on the idea that when you develop software in an approved environment with an ATO, the result out of that is an application that is basically ready to be fielded, or you have a certification to field to go into our production environment at any point in time and run, and it basically that has an authority to operate because of that. Now, a CTF though, if you take that software and you just graft it onto another environment, then the ATO doesn't necessarily, they don't necessarily get the environment plus that CTF application would need to be approved holistically to get an ATO. So that's still something that your authorizing official has to approve. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. So it sounds like if you go if you go the party bus route, if you start
Yep.
down to party bus has like continuous ATO, and then your apps are just getting CTF on top of that.
Correct.
That's kind of where you go. So if we went the kind of where, if you start with Iron Bank, if we started there, you know, we email the Platform One at Apple's partners. Do you guys have an authorizing official, or not you guys, but does Platform One provide us access to an authorizing official that could ATO our environment?
So the answer is no, not like, it's not you don't just find an authorizing official and just say, hey, can you certify this for someone else? The way that it works in the government is they have pre-designated authorizing officials for every organization that's out there for the ITs they use. So he won't, or he or she in that organization isn't going to advocate that that responsibility to another authorizing official somewhere else, like the one that we use is Denny Holtzman for our party bus. They're not going to abdicate that responsibility to say, hey, I'll just defer to him, or because, whatever. So that person, that AO for that customer organization needs to actually approve the implementation of their own platform. Now we can certainly connect the dots and say, hey, we can provide, we have our information system security officer, we have our AOs. Our AO we can orchestrate maybe a government to government interaction with the customer AO to make sure that they understand, the security aspects of this on the level of detail they need to be feel comfortable. But we certainly can't just approve it for them, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like we had a Sebastian Welch who raised their hand but is no longer raising. Did we answer your question, Sebastian?
Yeah, this is actually Robbie Roberts, and I ended up logged in with Sebastian's name. He's our CTO. But so we are working, on R&D projects for the SpaceForce to develop a cloud-native platform for modeling and simulation of spacecraft. So it's a cloud-native application. It's designed for integration with other systems. So it's a digital engineering tool that's designed to kind of be the home base for this modeling and simulation of a spacecraft. So, we logged on here to learn about Platform One. We haven't had any, education. It's obviously come up and we've heard about it a lot, but I lowered my hand because Richard's question and the kind of conversation there was complementary to my question. But I think he's coming into it with a lot more knowledge of the system and where they fit in. So we're just trying to understand, is there a place that a capability like ours fits into Platform One? Where do we really, start in pursuing any kind of, integration or whatever you might call it? What would a cloud native application like ours that can be integrated into SpaceForce developed tools fit, and how do we start that process?
When you say cloud native, I mean, it's a containerized application already.
Yeah. So it's built on, it's right now we have a live beta instance running on AWS GovCloud. We can run on Azure. We don't depend on any specific AWS capabilities. And we can also containerize it and run it locally on network infrastructure or on a single computer.
Yeah. So for a lot of the use cases you're talking about, that's where the Iron Bank process, hardening approval or hardening comes into play. I stopped on the approval because we're trying to shift that language. Actually, we're trying to change it so that when you come through the Iron Bank process, you go through the scanning, the hardening of your containers, and then make it available for your customers to ingest. We're shifting towards a process where you can do that, and then once you go through that process, then it pops on the other side. Then we're actually developing a risk radiator, essentially like a nutrition label of like, hey, because hey, there's some things that maybe you didn't quite do, and so there's a risk there, or maybe there's there's some things that need to improve. But there's some organizations that are willing to take that risk for whatever reason, right? So they can understand what the risk they're going to have, and then their AOs would then have to take that into consideration as they actually implement it in their platform pipelines. If it's a capability, let's say in the future, P1, we say, hey, we need something like that, and you provide that software, and we want to use it, then we would take that same container, and then we would then approve it to integrate with Big Bang and Platform Party Bus. So the approval process is only for our consumption or our use and our deployment of our products, and otherwise it'd be a risk radiator. And the only other caveat, and this is where we do need some help on your side, is that once you go in Iron Bank, it's not enough to like just leave it there, right? It has to be continuously improved, and because things happen. You maybe want to add new features, or some security thing, another log4j happens. And so we want to make sure that you are obviously continuing to invest in your own stuff that you have in Iron Bank, so that it stays relevant for our DoD customers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So the starting point is kind of Iron Bank.
Yes, and if you the starting point is just go through our front door, Platform One partners, at AppWorks, and then they can direct you and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and we do have a process flow to support people like you to get stuff into Iron Bank, and then they can kind of guide you from there. If that makes sense.
Okay, and I mean, I have some assumptions, but just so I understand the value proposition for us, what is the value proposition for us? It sounds like customers of yours who are DoD developers who are using Platform One would have streamlined access to our tool, or our tool would be in the platform for them to integrate into their systems, and there would be some opportunity to inherit certification or some kind of evaluation that would expedite an ATO with a specific program or organization. Is that correct? Am I kind of capturing the value prop for us?
Yeah, you're on the right track. The value proposition is that one is people that use Platform One capabilities, even if they're just using Iron Bank, because not everyone's using Big Bang, right? They just say, hey, I like the container. So what they go for Iron Bank for is that they say, hey, it's been scanned and hardened by the government, essentially. So there's an implied warranty, using idle speak of like, hey, there's a level of warranty associated with this, in the sense that, hey, the government's looked at it and they've approved it for use by other people. And so it makes the hurdle of like trusting the software a little bit, it makes them more readily trustable. We've had other, different business models where some people like, it's free and it's fine. They have like a freemium version, right? So they provide that, and then they work well with the customers that are using the software to actually then do a licensing scheme where they say, hey, once you want to go more, then here's a license, and then unlock features and blah, 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 right? So that's how some of these organizations do it. But the point is providing a place where people trust the software. One kind of example, it's not DoD, but I was surprised at the reach of Platform One's software as far as it is. We were at KubeCon last year, and long story short is we ran into some guys at Citibank, and they actually said they use Iron Bank containers in their implementation for Citibank, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's a level of trust that, hey, we've done some due diligence as opposed to just pulling it from the wild.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
John, I think with the few minutes left, we have a few questions in the chat. So I'd like to bring up Paul's question. He said, you mentioned some technology lock in that still remains. And can you touch on what that technology lock is and share a little bit more about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have, honestly, I don't have it off the top of my head. And in fact, I don't know if I'm not comfortable talking about it in this forum, but certainly if you want to shoot us a note, and then we can have an offline discussion about that, because, it does get into some, sensitive topics about strategy and who's who in the zoo. And so I'd rather kind of work through that offline.
Awesome. So then next we have, let's see, Rosa. She says, is there a process to add third-party components that are supported by Big Bang?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I think it's kind of similar to the previous question about, it's basically you go through the same process. Again, your components would go through an Iron Bank scanning process, and then we would obviously then take the next step beyond that to see if we can, help you integrate. And there's APIs that we publish for Big Bang to help you kind of say, hey, if I'm developing an add-on for Big Bang, this is how you would do so. So we can certainly work with you on that. Again, first step is just kind of going through our front door, and they can kind of vector you to the right places, through Iron Bank as well as the Big Bang POCs for that.
All right, is there any other questions from our participants?
I think there's one I see. It says our new ATO is required to use P1 as P1 changes. So no. So well, let me say no. But if you're using like P1 native capabilities, party bus, Jira components that we provide, then we manage that quote unquote ATO. But really, we have a continuous ATO, meaning we have a process to ingest new changes and updates to our software without having to do a whole new ATO package and go through a whole new process. So that's a continuous ATO. We continuously are validating the ATO we have today. If there are other organizations that are adopting Big Bang, running their own instance of Big Bang and running their own platforms, it really should. They should not be doing new ATOs every time. They should be following the model that Platform One uses. We're using the components we have today, and when they first get that first ATO from their environment, after that, the process of updating it should be the same, because that's the point of why we build what we build and how we build it, is to enable that continuous ATO. So really, the answer is they shouldn't require a whole new ATO every time some new component changes. Yeah, so Richard, yeah, we don't provide 24 hours, 24/7 support. So it's just a 9 to 5 kind of business hours Central Time. Yes, under circumstances that people will need some help, and we got it. But for the most part, in general, we don't provide 24/7 support.
We have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone else have one remaining question? I'm going to take the crowd silence as we are not having any questions. There's no confusion here. So, Dong, do you want to leave us with any parting words before we wrap up?
Yeah, I first of all, I want to thank Scouts Campus for putting this together once again. Thank you for doing this. This is really great. The people that are there's a lot of people out there that have lots of questions on P1. It is confusing. I appreciate you guys setting this up to help clarify that. And I gotta shout out to Joey again, because he's just backing me up on the chat. So thank you for that. But the journey on this is that I want to re-emphasize that it's about learning, doing small, learning, and doing continuously, and then having the talent of people to do so. It takes a culture shift. I know we've been talking a lot heavily on technology, but really all that doesn't mean squat if you don't have the right people doing it. And so really, if you have, I'm more passionate about the people and the culture than I am the technology, because the technology changes, but good people never change. So thank you for taking the time to hear me speak. I know I said a lot of stuff, but if you have any questions, again, we can kind of work some questions offline too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today and being our presenter. I just want to say to everyone who participated today, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have another webinar on March 2nd. And let's see, the topic is going to be, who are the Platform One resellers? So please come back and join us. We'll put out that registration link on all our social media platforms. So, and then we'll also probably send you a follow-up email with this as a follow-up to this. And thank you so much once again for everyone coming and spending time with us today.